Hey there, my friends. We're ready to talk about semicolons this week, so make sure you have a handout in front of you with your guided notes and you're ready to follow along with me. Remember last week we talked about colons. That's the one with the 2 dots on it. We saw that colons we use for things like time and to introduce a list. We use it for a formal letter introduction, Dear Mr. President, for example. And we also use it anytime that we have a quote or a list introduced by a full sentence. Today we're going to talk about the semicolon, the one with a dot and the comma underneath it. Semicolons are not quite a period and they're not quite a comma. They kind of do those two jobs together at the same time. We've already used some of these when we talked about fragments and run-ons and comma splices. So we're going to see them again here. Rule 8.4. Use a semicolon between 2 complete sentences. We are only going to use a semicolon when the 2 sentences are closely related. Otherwise, we would just use a period. All right? So if they're closely related, we'll use a semicolon. If they aren't closely related, we're just going to use a period and a capital letter just like we normally would, 2 separate sentences. So I want to say something like, there was a sudden silence. Everyone was stunned by the outcome. I'm explaining why there's a silence. So these 2 things are very closely related. I have a cause and effect. The cause is that they're stunned. The effect is that there is silence going on. So I want to keep them closely related. I'll use a semicolon to do that. So if I'm saying something like, Carl is tall, his brother is short, we have 2 full sentences. The division happens right here. So I can use a semicolon right inside here to separate these 2 things. This is a comparison. So cause and effect is a good time to use a semicolon. Direct comparison of 2 things is a good time to use a semicolon. He knocked several times. No one came to the door. Again, we have a cause and effect. He's knocking several times because no one came to the door. We have an outcome and what happened before that. Let's use a semicolon between those. The siren blew loudly. I rushed to the window. The police raced past as I looked out. There are actually 3 sentences going on here. The siren blew loudly. I rushed to the window. The police raced past as I look out. Semicolons are not powerful enough to link 3 sentences together. Only 2. So it's an important thing to know that we can't put 2 semicolons in a single sentence with 1 period. So we're going to have to make one of these its own sentence. Semicolons can't do all of this at once. So I'm going to put a period right in here. The siren blew loudly. That's a good place to put a period. I rushed to the window, and when I got there, this is what I saw. The police raced past as I look out. We could link these 2 together. The siren blew loudly. I rushed to the window. This is a cause and effect. This is also kind of like a timeline thing. So this is what happened first, and this is what's happening almost at the same time. So we could have linked our other 2 sentences together with a semicolon. I just chose that one because, honestly, this one's already capitalized. So it's already ready for me to just drop in a period. But it's good to know a semicolon cannot link 3 full sentences. Rule 8.5. A semicolon between, use a semicolon between the 2 complete sentences joined by some, I'm going to box in that word, coordinating conjunctions. Only by some of those. It's not all coordinating conjunctions, only some of them. So I know your next question is going to be, well, which ones? All right, so we'll get there in a second. Although the story is impossible, comma, I believe you. We have an intro statement with a comma in a full sentence. Therefore, I will help you. Here's the semicolon. This is our coordinating conjunction, so I'm going to put a CC underneath it. Coordinating conjunction goes on there. A conjunction is just something that joins two sentences together, or words or phrases. Peanut butter and jelly, right? And is a conjunction. Coordinating just means it's putting two things together. There are things that belong together. So these two sentences belong together. They need a coordinating conjunction. However, you're going to ask me which ones use a comma and which ones use a semicolon. All right. So it's back to that good old fanboys thing. All of these are going to use a comma. Anything with a fanboys conjunction, we should be using a comma, not a semicolon. So to refresh you on what those might be, the fanboys conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. The rules of grammar generally say that when we have these ones, we shouldn't start a new sentence with any of these words. Since we shouldn't start a new sentence with these words, and since a semicolon joins two complete sentences, we can't use a semicolon because the next sentence would start with one of these fanboys conjunctions that shouldn't start its own sentence. Instead, it's going to be all the other conjunctions. All of these guys here, we're going to use a semicolon. Therefore, nevertheless, moreover, consequently, furthermore, besides, on the other hand, however, example, on the contrary, accordingly, all this kind of other stuff. Okay? It's a way to relate two sentences together and compare what they say. Since you asked my opinion, I will tell you, and I hope you will listen well. All right, looking for a full sentence going on. Since you asked my opinion, I will tell you. I hope you will listen well. I look at the conjunction in between them. It's an and conjunction. That's one of our fanboys conjunctions right up here. So I'm not going to use a semicolon. I'm going to use a comma before the and. Although he is highly qualified, he is not dependable. There's a sentence. I am afraid to hire him. Here's our conjunction in between. Therefore, that is not one of our fanboys conjunctions, so I'm going to use a semicolon in here. It's kind of picky, but we've got to know these fanboys conjunctions up here. Okay. Because Sarah is absent a lot, she has a hard time keeping up. On the other hand, she is willing to work overtime. I see my split in sentences is right here. Because she is absent a lot, she has a hard time keeping up. She is willing to work overtime. So this is our comparison of these two things. On the other hand, here's a reason why we should hire her. She might have a hard time keeping up. On the other hand, she is willing to work overtime, so that's a pretty good thing. Two things joined together, not a fanboys conjunction. Use a semicolon. Last but not least, we have one more rule about how semicolons are used. Rule 8.6. We're going to use it to separate items in a list when those items already have commas. Now you may have a hard time thinking about what that might be, but when we see some examples, it'll make some more sense. When I think about things like city and state, they have a comma in them already. And I want to make sure that I see that this is 3 separate places, not 6 places where we have lived. I don't want to think that I've lived in Logan and Utah and Las Vegas and Nevada and Rio Claro and Brazil. It's not 6 places I've lived. I've only lived in 3. Okay? So Logan is in Utah. And because Logan is in Utah, we want to separate those by a comma. To make it clear now, so I don't have another comma going on here to make it look like a big long list of 6, I use this semicolon in between here and in here to separate these things that already have a comma in them. Okay? We see this mostly with 2 things. We see it with city and state. Sorry, it's so hard to write with this thing. City and state. And we also see it when we use appositives, which is why we had to study appositives previously. Remember, appositives, they make positively sure that we know who we're talking about. They help rename or add detail about something. We're going to see that here in our first one. The new in-laws are Jay, Pam's husband, Amy, Will's wife, and Mark, Terry's husband. The way it looks right now, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, maybe. But this and is throwing me off. This means that these 2 things are actually the same. So what I actually have is a whole bunch of appositives. Jay is Pam's husband. Amy is Will's wife. And Mark is Terry's husband. They are the same. Jay and Pam's husband is the same person. So to separate this, I actually need this comma to become a semicolon. Amy is Will's wife. So we have a series of appositives going on here. I need a semicolon to separate. And Mark, Terry's husband. So the comma joins them and keeps them renamed like appositives. The semicolon separates these items. My brother, the electrician, my sister, the ER nurse, and my brother-in-law, the town mayor, all live in Texas. Oddly enough, I'm only listing 3 things here. There are only 3 people I'm talking about. My brother is an electrician. So my brother, comma, the electrician, semicolon. My sister is an ER nurse. My sister, comma, the ER nurse, semicolon. And my brother, who is the town mayor, so here comes the appositive, my brother, the town mayor, comma. We set off an appositive with commas. Our list items are separated by semicolons. And they all live in Texas. All right. I have been to San Francisco, California, Buffalo, New York, Washington, D.C., and Miami, Florida, but I haven't been to Hawaii yet. I know my geography. San Francisco is in California, Buffalo is in New York, Washington is in the District of Columbia, and Miami is in Florida. So I want to keep those things grouped with the comma, but in between, I need to make this a semicolon so I can help clarify that I haven't been to 8 places. I have been to 4. Alright, this might be one that you might need to review a time or 2 before it makes a lot more sense. We do have some items on the back side of your paper to help you practice. 6 items. So keep on thinking about where you might need to put a colon when you're introducing a list, a letter, time, or a quote, a complete sentence before that list or quote, or if you're going to be using a semicolon, or if you're going to be using a comma. So when it says punctuation, you've got 3 options you need to watch out for. Good luck, do your best. We will check it tomorrow in class, first thing. Good luck.